Some familiar faces in the crowd, maybe here and there. All right, so you guys are here for the sketching basics, going back to basics of sketching and stuff like that. So, well, that's what we're going to talk about. So there's a couple things that came to mind. I am a trainer by trade, and I go and talk to people, and I get a lot of tech support calls and stuff like that. So what I did was I took some of that information that I get, some questions that I'm asked on a regular basis, and kind of parlay it out there. So some stuff you might know, maybe some stuff you don't know. Maybe we'll make life a little bit easier and stuff like that. A couple of you guys, quite a few people I haven't seen before, so I want you to understand, please feel free to ask questions. It's kind of an open kind of forum here while I'm talking. If you need a little bit more detail or something pops up, please feel free to ask a question. I'll be happy to try to answer in front of everybody. So the whole stump the chump works for me sometimes it doesn't. So let's get into this a little bit and talk about sketch geometry. So we're getting back to basics here, so let's talk about it. So one of the first things we run into is a line, right? Everybody's familiar with a line. Geometry line is a straight, no bends, has blah, 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 blah. All right, so let's go to circles. Once again, we got a simple closed shape. It is a set of all points and blah, 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 blah. All right, so, maybe a little bit too simple, right? Go a little bit higher, you think? Is that okay with you guys? All right, good. All right, so let's get some real stuff here. Let's go ahead and talk about it. Little things, all right? This is what we really want to talk about, is things that you may or may not know. One of the complaints that I get a lot from customer side, usually not in my essentials class because I teach you guys how to do this, but basically, how many you guys run into where you want to just draw a single line and then you have to hit escape or cancel out and then hit the line tool again, and then you have to draw another single line, then you have to hit escape and cancel out. Okay, so raise your hands if you run into that before. Okay, all right, good. See, so look, something I am going to work well with. All right, so, because I wasn't planning ahead, I was worrying about my microphone here. Let's get SolidWorks going. Let's talk about this. So, how many of you guys have heard about the click versus click drag methodology in sketches? Got one person? Anybody else? Another couple? Okay, handful and stuff like that. That'll work out pretty good. Well, let's talk about this. So, SolidWorks has a couple different ways of how it can work, and we'll start up my sketch here. I started using it yesterday, so this should work out pretty good. All right, so basically click versus click drag. This is something that you should keep in the back of your mind. If you find yourself hitting escape way too many times, this is probably what you're running into. And really what it is you want to draw two parallel lines, right? So you can sit there and just draw two parallel lines. Notice the lack of cancellations and going back to the line tool and stuff like that. But most of the time what people do is they go ahead and click and, well, I didn't want that, so let's hit escape, let's hit undo, let's go ahead and draw that other line, and then let's hit escape and let's start another line. I'm pretty quick. I'm using my little mouse commands up there to get my line up as quick as possible, but I still have those extra steps that are going in, all right? So what you just saw there was a demonstration of click drag versus click click. The first two sets of lines that I did were where I was clicking to start the line, dragging it to where I want it to end, and then letting go. So what happens there is when we go ahead and do that, we click, we drag it, we let go of the mouse. That's going to make it so it doesn't continue to draw lines. You're not going to get the rubber band effect of one line after another. So works out pretty good in the long run, in the fact that you can quickly draw a bunch of single lines and then maybe cross them over and do whatever, but I don't get that rubber band effect. So thing is we've been kind of trained through other programs to click, 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 click. Unfortunately in SolidWorks, there is a big difference on whether you click a couple times or you click and drag and let go. Sound fair enough? All right, so is that kind of cool? Did you guys learn one thing at least? There you go, all right. That's all I'm hoping for, okay? All right, we're all done for the day. All right, so tangent arcs on the fly. This is actually pretty beneficial. So what this is this is a tool that allows your line tool to be another tool. And so if we take a look at it, let's go ahead and get rid of all this stuff here. We're going to go ahead and start by drawing a line. And I'm doing that click-click methodology, right? Now, you get into an area where you need to add a tangent arc to it. Well, I can come up here to the very top, and I'm going to do something here so we can have some cool special effects. We're going to come up, we have our arc, and we have a tangent arc. Has anybody ever used this tool before? All right, most people have, right? I will tell you the last time I pointed to this was about 3 months ago when I was doing an essentials class, and I told people, here's your tangent arc. don't ever use it again. I actually don't use this at all. It's kind of ridiculous to go up to it, especially after I show you what this cool thing is. So I am in the line command. Does everybody see that? All right. So I'm going to start, and I'm going to do the pick method here. All right. Would you guys say that's an arc? No. All right. So what we do is this. I will tell you every button click that I do up here. So are you listening? I'm going to move my mouse, and then I'm going to move it back out and have it become a tangent arc.
Whoa.
Did you hear the buttons I clicked?
No.
No. Did I tell you any buttons that I clicked?
No.
All right. So the cool part is this is not something you have to click or hit or do anything. In fact, I will guarantee it that if you've used SOLIDWORKS for, say, about a year, you've probably had this happen, but it's not when you wanted it. And you're like, why is there an arc here, right? So here's the cool part. So if you do this, I'm going to go back to where it started from, and you pull out a different way. It will give you the different tangencies. Even though this isn't a tangency, it does give you the 90-degree hit to the circle there. What it's doing is it's keeping the center of the circle on the line at this point. So if you don't like the way it looks, you just simply restart it by going back to the start point and going from there. Once you bring it out, we'll go ahead and pull it out to an angle. I'll drop it down, and I'm right back into my line command. So I can draw another little line. I pull away, I go back to where it started, and I come back out. It will always be a tangent line. Nice thing is, I can do it with other pieces of geometry as well too. Whether it's a spline, a line, an arc, anything like this, all you do is you move away from it, come back to it, sweep out and around the way that you want the arc to go. Whether it's tangent to it, or anti-tangent, or 90-degree tangent, whatever it needs to be. Sound good? All right, so one thing I will tell you though, is if you ever get stuck, and you inadvertently do this, the first response is hit escape, start the line command over, all that good stuff. Actually, if you hit the A key at this point and move your mouse, it'll turn it back into a line. Also, if you can't quite get that whole sweepy swoopy thing where it's starting again, you can hit the A key and it will turn it into the arc. So you actually have the ability to turn it off and on the fly as well too. A key, A for arc. Arc. If you keep that for Pirates Day, there you go. All right, so like I said, swoopy thing. Tangent arc, it's been there. I think I've used it probably once in the last 6 years. I had to go and do a tangent arc just because I think it was closer than the line command was, and that's how lazy I am. All right. All right. So relationships on the fly. Relationships, long walks on the beach, all that good stuff. All right. So relationships on the fly. This is actually something that I want to kind of show everybody as well too. When you're drawing inside of a sketch, there's a lot of stuff that pops up, from things around your cursor to lines going about the screen. And I kind of want to tell you guys a little bit about that, what they are, and how they can be beneficial to you as well too. All right. So let me come in. We're going to go ahead and do some more deleting here. And we get into where we are drawing lines. So, you know, some pretty easy relationships that we're used to are going to be like the horizontal, right? And the vertical. We've all seen these before, right? So, you know, we do get into situations like this where maybe we're making a shape out there, and then we start getting what we call inferencing lines. Now, they are a little difficult to see up there. Let me zoom in and see it, but can you guys see the yellow lines coming off? All right, these are what's called inferencing lines. It's allowing us to inference a relationship or a position or something like that. In fact, if we take a look at it, you'll see that there's yellow ones and that there's blue ones as well too. Does anybody out in the crowd know what the difference between the blue and the yellow is? See, that's why I'm presenting up here. All right, so let me impart some knowledge on you because I am married with a kid and apparently I don't know anything. So basically what this is this. So the blue line, does it make sense what it's trying to point out? If I click right here, the position of the end of the line will be exactly above the other line. Now, if I do something like this, I'll get something a little bit different. If I drop it on the yellow line, it's going to say that I'm at a perpendicularity, all right? Now, the difference between the blue and the yellow is this. Yellow will add a relationship, okay? And it's actually being corresponded with the icon right next to it. Does everybody see the perpendicular? Now, I could even put it in line, and this is not parallel. This would be collinear because the lines are collinear in shape here. Now, if I could take it over here and take a look at it, we'll see that SOLIDWORKS is actually telling me that there would be two relationships. Well, not really. Notice that one of the relationships is yellow, one has a white background, which is hard to see on my white background. Basically, it says if you click here, I'm going to apply a horizontal relationship to the line itself, but you are vertically aligned with that blue point underneath it. Does that kind of make sense? All right, so if I click here, that works out pretty good. And because I'm horizontally or vertically aligned above there, it means if I try to drag it down, the relationships will say, hey, look, if you click here, you're going to get 2 relationships. What's the first relationship that I'm going to get? Does anybody know what that is?
Coincident.
Yeah, it's coincident. Merge, actually, I think this is a merge point, but it's coincident for all intents and purposes. And then we're also going to make it horizontal at the same time. All right, now, this is kind of cool, but we can actually take this beyond there. Those inferencing lines are actually pretty cool. There are certain times, let me go ahead and zoom back out here, where you're drawing a line, and when you draw the line, you want to go ahead and make it parallel to this one. Now, in most cases, we could probably draw the line and then pick the lines and then, oh, my property's not working, and then we could make those parallel, right? Or if you're pretty snazzy, you know how to use the toolbars, and you can come up here and make it parallel as well too. I am self-professed the laziest user inside of SOLIDWORKS. Moving my mouse that much is way too much work for me, all right? So let's get it down to something a little bit easier. Now, you have to do this as you're creating the geometry. So that is one thing. You got to kind of know how to do it, but once you start getting into it, you'll find that you can quickly add relationships fairly quickly. So I'm going to come in, start drawing a line, and I'm just going to click. I'll do the click method up here. Now, before I click the end of it, I'm going to hover over this line, and if you notice, you'll see that the yellow inferencing lines came up. Remember what happens with the yellow inferencing lines? If I drop it onto the yellow inferencing line, it will go ahead and make those parallel. So without picking them or anything, if I take a look at it, we can see that there is a parallel relationship put onto those at that point. Kind of cool?
Yeah.
All right. Other relationships that we get out here, I'll show you this one because most people fight it, including myself, more than anything, and it's the ubiquitous when does it become actual tangent here. And once again, I'm going to zoom into the screen here. Here I'm coincident with it. If I pull it up just a little bit more, you'll see it lines up with that inferencing line. So here, if I click it, it is made coincident with the arc, and it's made tangent, all with a single button click. All it is just paying attention to those little clues. Unfortunately, because they pop up all the time, I find people ignore them, right? All right. Are we still on for some kind of good stuff? Got a question?
What was that again? How did you add the parallel relationship?
It's when you're drawing the geometry, before you place the other end of it, whether you're doing click or click drag, you just need to hover over something, and then you'll see the inferencing lines light up for you there. Does that make sense? Yep, perpendicular. I mean, they're not too snazzy, but if you think about it, outside of horizontal and vertical, perpendicular, parallel, those are ones that we use frequently. Tangent is used quite a bit, but here you can see that I'm adding these relationships on the fly as well too. Good enough?
Cool. Can you change the color of the inferencing line?
Yeah, if you go into, so the color can be changed for the inferencing lines, and that's going to be under your system options, and then colors. And then inside of here somewhere is the inferencing line sketch. It's been a while, but it is in here. There you go. Was not ready for that question. Great, thanks. If you could please walk out. No, but yeah, the color can be changed. It is changing there. It used to be orange and some other color way back in the day. So they changed it to a more pleasant, I can't see the yellow on my screen, and to, you know, to something else. So, but yeah, definitely they can be changed out if you need them to. All right, so close contours. Let's see, we've got, well, the new close contour. So how many guys have used SOLIDWORKS for, say, longer than 2 to 3 years? All right, so not too many people. So what we have here is you'll notice that when I'm drawing geometry, we can see that the geometry is kind of appearing. And then when I close the contour out to make a nice closed loop here, we'll see that we get the shaded contour. Now, I did notice, including myself, a lot of the older users that have been using it for a long time, whenever SOLIDWORKS puts something nice and new for us to use on the screen, the first thing we do is we're like, ah, and we turn it off because we got enough stuff on the screen. I got these lines flying off, I don't know what they do. And so I actually did the same thing. There is a button up here called shaded, so if it does get too busy, it is a quick button that you can turn off and on the fly. Now, what I like about them, so this is a saving grace, is you know, I draw geometry off of the origin a lot sometimes. I don't want relationships to the origin. I need relationships to the geometry. Once I get all that information there, then I usually take it and I'll move it over. Now, a complex shape like this, if I wanted to move it, say I wanted to grab this, well, I can't just window grab. Believe me, this bugs me too. You can't window grab and then drag something over. Oh, look, it's doing it now. Those bastards. All right. So issues that you run into are stuff like this. We're just not going to deal with that line anymore. So we'll do this, and we'll pretend that didn't happen. I'm going to edit it, so that's out of there. All right. There we go. All right. So these are things that we run into. Like here, this is a typical one. So I just told you about those nice, cool automatic relationships. Here's where they bite you in the butt a little bit, all right? And the reason being is that when I was drawing this line, I made it perpendicular to this line to this line. So when I go to move stuff around, all my relationships help me out. Not at all here in this case. So you guys might have run into this. You have a sketch that you're trying to define, and you're trying to put that last relationship, that last dimension on, and it goes, oh, I'm over-defined. Well, you can't figure it out, and then finally, eventually, either you look at it or you call somebody over and they take a look at it, and then they like, well, what is this perpendicular relationship in there? I don't know. I didn't put it in. That was the auto relationships helping you out. So while they are really cool, make sure you pay real close attention to them. So let me go ahead and get rid of this relationship. All right. So the object here is I am trying to get just take this geometry and move it over, right? And so if I grab a line, it only moves the line parallel to itself. So I end up like pulling these points over, trying to hopefully get it over to where it's going. And has anybody been in a condition like this? All right. So this is where the shaded contour actually comes in. When that is a closed contour, the beautiful part is this is the same as selecting all the lines all at one time. So that shaded section is available for you. In fact, there's even some cool relationship things you can do with it as well too, just to make things equal or line stuff up with each other. It does work. So understand that picking the shaded area is the same as picking all the outside lines. Sound good? All right. How do you enable it? There's an icon under your sketch. There should be an icon called Shaded Sketch Contours. I'm in 19. The shaded contours have been around for quite a few years. So unless you're on like 2013 or 14, you should be okay. I don't remember the exact date because when they gave it to us, I turned it off automatically. I know it's been there since 16. All right, so let's take a look at a path length. All right, so this is something that's a little bit newer to the software. It's been around for a couple of years. Versions at least, but there is something called a path length. So let's start out with something kind of straightforward. We should understand what's going on here. So if I need to know or put the length onto a line, I've got a couple choices here, right? So I can place that in there. I can say it's 75, and I would say that's a pretty good dimensional length for the line. All right, so that's pretty normal. The other one that we have here is, well, we've got the length of an arc. So here we have an arc. This is the radius of the arc. Does anybody know what the length of this is at this point in time? All right. Well, if I calculate it out, figure X, Y positions of the endpoints where the center is, I can do some trig and then figure it out. But what if I need to control that length? And this is actually pretty nice in larger, more complex sketches. But notice I haven't placed my dimension down yet. And that's because if I place it down, I'm going to get a radius. So this actually takes a couple button clicks to do this on an arc. So you start by picking the arc first, and then you pick one endpoint, and then you pick another endpoint, and you will get an arc length dimension that comes out on it. All right. Nice part is I can say that this needs to be 120, and then I can come back and throw a dimension on for the radius, and I can change that radius, and it will still keep the same length of line in there no matter what happens to it. Now, can you make it fill out? Absolutely. All right. No, I did not. No, while you're in the dimension tool, you do not have to hold down the control key because you're in an active tool at that time. So you just pick the arc, pick the endpoint, place the dimension down, you're all set to do. Now, a little bit more, we still haven't even gotten to the length here, is sometimes there are situations like this. Let's go ahead and throw a point in here. All right, so I have a line I got a point here, an endpoint here, I got a line at an angle. All right, so what I can do with this is if I needed to put the angle of the line here, I can pick the line and, well, usually I got to pick another line, right? That gives me my angle. Well, in this particular condition, I don't have an endpoint to go, or I don't have a line to go to. Now, there are two ways to solve this. One way is you can start by picking one end of the angle, the vertex of the angle, and the other end of the angle, and then Brian did it completely wrong, so we're going to rewind that. Start by picking the vertex of the angle, and then pick the two endpoints of the angle itself, and you can actually put an angular dimension in there without having another line to go to. Now, this was our go-to for quite a few years there, especially in the beginning. SOLIDWORKS has also made improvements with the angle tool. If you pick one line first, and then you pick one of the endpoints, you will get some reference angles to pick from. These will be vertical and horizontal only, no other angles. Now, the one thing I will tell you, if you're going to use them, make sure it highlights before you click again. Even though your mouse may be over it, it may not highlight correctly. So it does highlight to the specific color, and when you pick it, you still get all the capability it was before, except none of the extra construction geometry and all the good stuff that makes our sketch all cranked up. Sound good? All right, still haven't gotten to path length. So path length actually works with splines, and everybody loves a spline, right? So we're going to come in, and I'm going to pick the spline itself when I do the dimension tool. Let me go ahead and bring that up a little bit, and you'll see it actually says length on it. If I click and place it down, I do have the ability to control absolutely the length of the spline itself. This works awesome if you're doing wires and tubes, okay? Because the problem that you've usually run into is if you've ever used splines to do things and then all of a sudden you move apart just a little bit, like a quarter inch, no big deal, right? And then one of these points on the spline decides that it wants to move about 6 miles away from your part. Mm-hmm. All right, so this actually will kind of reduce that a little bit. Nice part is, let me go ahead and fix this end down here. Is, I've got the ability to grab that, and it will only stay the length that I told it to be. Okay. The other nice thing is if you get a little fancy with it, you can. No, we're not going to do that. Sorry, brain was clicking, but I'm going to say I haven't tried that, so we're not going to do it. But definitely does help with the spline. So this is one of those things that you never had really great control over the length of the spline. You had to just hope it was the right size. A lot of times what we would end up doing is we would pick it, and then way down at the bottom down here, we'd say, oh yeah, that should be about the right size there. All right. So definitely keep it in mind. Down here at the bottom?
No, I mean...
Oh, it's just a simple dimension. So I'm in the dimension tool, and if you pick a spline anywhere except on a point, if you pick a spline anywhere, you will get the length for it. Pretty easy. You want to do it again? Slow it down.
How do you set it versus just...
Say that again.
How do you set the length rather than just having...
That is a controlling dimension. It is a driving dimension. So as soon as you put it on and place it down, you'll be given a box. And like in this case, I'll change it to 100, and it'll switch it down. So all my points are still there, and it won't get any bigger than 100. If you want to modify it, double click on it, change it to 150, and then you can start cranking it around again, right? Don't tell your coworkers how to do it, just amaze them, right? Or if they're doing splines, just put dimensions on it. Don't tell them how you're doing it. All right. Now, there's a couple other tools in here as well, too. We've got the split entity. Split entity allows you to break lines, geometry into smaller pieces. If you guys have ever done any kind of lofting or anything like that, yes, sir? There's a fly. Right? It's wings on the fly. Everything was on the fly. Tangent on the fly, relations on the fly, wings on the fly. All right. So let's take a look at the split entity. And this works for a couple different cases here. If you've ever done any lofting and found out that, hey, if I have the same number of endpoints in my sketch, life is a lot easier. Well, this is one of the reasons why you would use this tool. Now, the sad fact is you have to go to a forbidden zone to get to the tool. All right. So I'm going to right click on the arc here, and I'm going to come down to the sketch tools. All right. How many guys are familiar with these sketch tools? Anybody? out. All right. Okay, I don't like these tools. We're going to explain why a little bit later, especially when I get to another command I'm going to show you on the next set here. The reason being is that about 85% of these tools actually break your sketch. They don't really help out too much. Sometimes people go to the move entity and they're like, I go, why are you doing the move entity? Well, because I need to take my geometry and move it over. Turn on shaded, grab it, and move it. You're all set to go, right? Now, I'm not going to say that I've never been in here before, but I didn't announce that I was going in here, and I've had to go in here a couple times to get stuff done. So I am being a little facetious, but rotate entities. If you really want to hose your sketch up, that's a good one to use, all right? Don't do it to your sketch, do it to your coworker sketch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come all the way down to the split entity. Now, even though we have I don't think he's in here, we have a SOLIDWORKS rep here. Here's what I don't like. Under curves, there's something that's under curves called split line. You think that's what this command would be called, but the split line splits a surface. So then when they could split lines, they said, oh crap, we're already using that. So they have to call it split entity. So I'm going to go ahead and right click on the line I want to split. We're going to go to Sketch Tools, and we're going to come way down here to Split Entities, way at the bottom. All right, we're going to go ahead and click it, and if you take a look at it, you'll have a little icon there, and right now I have the no sign going on, and the no sign saying, well, you can't click here. Does that make sense why I can't click here? Yeah. All right, so let's go to where we can click. So you will get an OK symbol. When we click there, you'll see that an endpoint has now appeared. If I click over here, it'll put yet another endpoint in. The way you get out of this is you have to hit escape. If you've taken training with DASI Solutions and had James, escape is okay to hit. All right, so what we've done there is we've taken that one single arc and we've turned it into 3 separate arcs. They are, in fact, if I take a look at the properties of it, it is co-radial. Co-radial is a relationship that says equal in size and concentric to center. All right, so it works out pretty good, but it does give me points to do it. And if you're lofting from, say, a shape like this to, say, a rectangle, you now have the same number of endpoints, and you'll find that your lofts actually loft a lot nicer now. Okay. Now, one thing to note about it, though, is circles are a special case. You can split the entity on a circle. Let's go down to the dirty tools, split entity. But you'll notice when I click the circle once, it gives me an asterisk, not an endpoint. And that means that with a circle, you have to put 2 endpoints on. We do not do circles with a single endpoint. All right. So if I click another side or some other area here, it will then put in the 2 endpoints for me. And once again, they are just 2 arcs now that are co-radial, same size, concentric to each other. Good one, yeah? All right, better than drawing 3 tangent arcs to each other, right? All right, now, another one that we have here is the segment tool. Segment tool's kind of similar to it, and there have been instances where I've had to draw a line, right-click on it, go to that split entity, and then I split this into a couple of pieces, come back over it, and then make these equal to each other. All right, like 18 easy steps, no big deal. All right, center lines, sometimes we have to do this. It just depends on what you're doing there. But now that I have this in, we can see that if I stretch one of these, they both all stretch together. All right, the other one that we run into is we may want a circle in there. And once again, we get in and we grab this. No, wait. We do the right click, we do the center, we do the split entity, and then we go through and we'll put 4 points on here because I want to break this into 4 pieces. But then we get into a completely different relationship, which is equal curve length, which means I can make the size of the arc equal to each other. But I have to make 2 of them, and then another 2, and then another 2, and then another 2, and I have to do a round robin. And once again, with 22 easy clicks on the screen, you can get something that's nice. SOLIDWORKS has given us a different tool. Not a lot of people know it, but it's called the segment tool. The segment tool basically does exactly what I said, but I just have to click a couple times, and that's it. So let's go ahead and we'll throw a couple pieces of geometry on here to play with. And we'll throw a circle in here as well too. And then we'll find the segment tool. Now the thing is I don't think I have it here. No. No. Well, let's come over to here. So, my favorite tool in the whole world is actually search commands. Now I'm going to come in here, type in segment. It's going to show me what I'm looking for, and then I'm going to hit the eyeball. Let's just make sure we know where it's at. Tools. Oh, there it is. All right. Actually, I'm going to do this because I use it quite a bit. I'm just going to drag it once I find it, and there we go. So that's all good to go. So I'm going to grab a line. I'm going to go to segment. Now you're actually given two options here. You can do sketch points on there, or you can actually split the line into multiple pieces. All right. So if I do sketch points, it's going to ask me how many points do I want on here. So if I need 4 sections, I need to put 3 points on. If I say okay to that, it gives me a line, and no matter what I do to the length of the line, let's go ahead and fix this end here, but we'll see that the points will readjust to always be equidistant there. Okay. Now we can do something similar to the arc. I'm going to pick it, go to segment. This time I'm going to do the sketch segments here. And when I do that, we'll see that it's asking me how many segments do I want. So if I come in and say that I need this to be 8 segments, I'll say okay to that. That actually gives me 8 individual arcs that are now split upon the arc. If I change one of these or stretch it out or do whatever, it will go ahead and react as if it's a singular arc here. Kind of good. All right. Works with circles, all kinds of good stuff.
Same thing with entities?
You could do the same thing, but then I'd have to go back and backfill the relationships to make sure that everything's equidistant and equal size. This does all that work for me without having to backfill it with any work. So most definitely it does make them that, but what they're doing here is they're also making them equal length as well too. So it goes back to me being super lazy, right? If I can get away with a mouse click, I'm all over it. Cool part is this works with any kind of geometry that I know of so far. I haven't run across anything that it didn't work with. Even if you have a convoluted spline, you can still pick it, hit that segment tool, and then say okay to that. And we will see that there are individual pieces of the spline there at that point. So literally we'll split it apart. I'm going to suggest that you don't do that though. All right, so let's go back and review. Click drag versus click click. Is that a new one for you guys? Sounds like something you can kind of take a look at. If you're not familiar with it, next time you get frustrated because you have to hit escape and restart the command, just run that through your head again. Takes a little bit to get used to it. Once you get used to it though, you will find yourself using it quite a bit. The other one that we have there, tangent arcs on the fly, right? Move your mouse back over where you started the line and swing it out. If it comes out the wrong way, just move that mouse right back. Don't click, don't hit a button, don't do anything. Just move it back and then sweep it out again. Takes a little practice, but once you do it a couple times and you get successful with it, you realize the little flare in your wrist that you got to put in to make it work right. All right. Relationships on the fly. Does that kind of explain some stuff to you guys? Feel a little bit better about that? Those lines now make sense that keep on popping up. They're actually useful. Split entity and the segment tools. Is that something that anybody could have used in the past? All right. How'd you get around it without knowing these tools were there? What's that? The hard way? Okay. Add relationships, a whole bunch of relationships. Yeah.
Figure out where the tool's at.
Yeah, yeah. And then it goes over defined, and then you're like, I think under defined will work out just fine. All right. So let's get into a little bit bigger things here. So these are a little bit bigger tools. So we're going to talk about the Sketch Expert. We also have the Modify Sketch tool. Has anybody ever heard the Modify Sketch tool? All right. So here's the sad fact. Modify Sketch tool was in the first version of the software. It's an old tool that's been around for a long time, but I'm going to show you why it's useful. In fact, we're probably going to run into something that you might have run into in the past, and you're like, why does the software do this? Let's explain it a little bit so it makes a little bit more sense here. So let's go ahead and we'll talk about modifying the Modify Sketch tool. Let me go ahead and open a component here. And we have a situation here where I have a sketch that's on my top plane, and I want to make a copy of it on the right plane here. Okay. Now I could go in and start a sketch and draw the shape again, but that's not really making a copy, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the actual sketch that I want. I'm going to hit Control C. Does everybody know what Control C does in Windows? Makes a copy, right? And then I'm going to go to the plane where I want it to go to, and I'm going to hit the Control V as in Victor, because that goes with paste, but whatever. All right. Now, this is kind of one of those similar things that you might run into. It pastes in, but then it turned 90 degrees. And then the first thing we all think in our head is, why would you do that? That's not what I wanted. Well, SolidWorks is not intelligent. It looks intelligent sometimes, it acts intelligently sometimes, but really it's just running off some very basic rules, all right? And it's a logic thing. So if I take a look at it, it really comes down to this. Let me edit the first sketch in here, and we'll take a look at it, and we're gonna take a look at the culprit itself, the origin, all right? Now, you'll notice that the origin has two different lengths of legs there. Does everybody see that? Does anybody know what that signifies? Thank you, Faith. You are awesome. Wait, Faith? Yes, Faith. Sorry. Looked like, well, look at Falth or something. I was like, wait a minute. Maybe I just screwed up. All right, so vertical and horizontal. A lot of times people are like, no, it's X and Y. No, it's not, because if I'm on a plane, that could be X and Z. So what it comes down to is, a lot of times you're drawing something and, you might get into a condition like this. All right. That went way better in my head. All right. So if I have a line and I draw it straight across the screen like that, is that vertical or is that horizontal? It's vertical, but we had to kind of think about it for a second, right? Well, you actually don't have to think about it. If I look at my origin and I see the long leg, I know that that's always vertical. Really what the condition that we get into is we draw a line something like this, and then we pick it, and SolidWorks goes, it's vertical. And you're like, no, it's not. It's horizontal. And then you're like, well, maybe it was vertical. All right, so this is when we fight the system a little bit there. So understand that this is really the culprit of what's going on. Now, this usually goes towards the positive direction of whatever you're utilizing down here, all right? So, and then it makes me a liar because it's pointing the wrong way, but we'll just act like I didn't say that. So, logic, right? I don't know. So, let's take a look at what happened when I moved it to yet a different plane here. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to go ahead and right-click and edit that sketch and take a look at it. And if I take a look at my origin, does everybody see it? Long legs pointing up, that's the vertical, that line's vertical, so on and so forth, and there we go. Now, here's what I was talking about earlier. So one way that we could fix this would be to use the dirty tools, all right? So I could grab all my geometry, I could right-click on a piece of it, I could go down to Sketch Tools, and then I could do Rotate, and it's great because I can come in here and say, I just need you to rotate this 90 degrees, and I hit Enter, and then I say OK to that. Oh wait, did that work?
Yes.
That's why I don't use the dirty tools. Oh yeah, gotta fill in the boxes. There we go. So we got that. Rotate it 90, no, 270, right? Because math in your head's a great thing to do in SolidWorks. I say okay to that, and yeah, that's exactly what I was looking for. Ta-da! Do you see why I call it the dirty tools now? All right. So the problem is that really what we're doing is we're fighting our relationships. Now, it's actually not too, if you want to use that rotate, it's not too hard to use it. All you do is you go into all the lines and you find the vertical and horizontal information that's in there, delete that, then go back and make things parallel and perpendicular because that can rotate. But then you're going to find out that dimensions themselves are actually horizontal and vertical relationships without being horizontal and vertical relationships. And then we're still not going to get a good end result. Almost to the point where you might as well just delete all the relationships, all the dimensions, rotate it, and then put all the relationships and all the dimensions back on. Do you see where I'm going with this? All right. Now, that's not my problem. My problem that I'm running into right now is really I want to just redirect what vertical is. Does that make sense? So I want to go ahead and say vertical should be up and down. Okay. So let's see. Oh, modify. So tools, sketch tools, and way down at the bottom, pretty obnoxious, is something called modify. Now when I click on it, we're going to get a brand new window that pops up here. And we're going to see that my mouse turns into a different, oh, well, let's do that too because that works out good for me. All right. So we're going to see that our mouse turns into an actual, like, you have to look pretty closely at it. If I left click, that is moving, okay? If I right click, that is rotating. Now the thing here though is that I am not moving and rotating the geometry, I'm moving and rotating my sketch. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Why am I making a distinction between geometry and sketch? Any ideas?
It's moving the origin instead.
Right. In fact, if I left click and drag, notice that my origin moves around. So think of your sketch as a transparency that I've drawn my geometry on. Now what I'm doing is I'm not moving the geometry, I'm taking that transparency and I'm moving it around. So not only can I move it around with the left button, but if I right click, I can also rotate it around. Do you see how my origin is rotating as well too? So then I can rotate it, and then I can grab that point and I can drag and drop it onto the other origin. Now SOLIDWORKS will pop up. It says, hey, because you're locking these points down, you're only going to be able to rotate me after that. I'm going to go ahead and say, yep, that's fine. So now I've been able to rotate that, but I didn't rotate the geometry. I rotated the sketch that the geometry was on. Sound good? All right, so if I take a look at that, looks a little bit better. We'll go ahead and close this out. Now, one thing I will tell you, there is no undo while you're in that command. If you hose it up, just escape, hit undo. It's going to throw it back to where it was. Go ahead and go back and try to use it again. The reason I say that, let me undo a couple times here. A couple times too many maybe. I'm going to go to Tools, Sketch Tools, and once again go down to that Modify. And when you're rotating, the rotation actually works. The farther you are away from it, the more granular the rotation is. So it's a little difficult to see it, but here I'm moving at 10, and if I go out farther, now I'm moving at tenths of a degree. All right. Now, the closer you get to your geometry, zoom to fit. I'm zooming way too many things at the same time here. Tools, Sketch Tools. There we go. So when I click here, you can see that that's going at 10 degree increments. Now it's 5, now it's 1. So, just kind of make sure you're okay. The reason I tell you to be careful is because if you're way out here and you rotate it at 89.9 degrees. Now nothing lines up in the world at all. So just be a little careful with it. Worst case scenario, pay real close attention before you let that go. The other thing though, the thing that I'm not paying any attention to is the little window that keeps on popping up, especially when you have to do it at a set number. What's that?
Yeah, 10 or 90 degrees and you're done.
Absolutely right. If you need to, you do have the windows over here. I can type in 90 and hit enter once. If it doesn't rotate it the right way, just keep on hitting it. Oh, that looks a little better. Yeah?
This is just the global origin?
Only the sketch origin. Yep. You'll see the global origin is still down there in the corner. It's still at the 0 point. Now, technically, my origin for the sketch now is off of that. So there can be some weird things that can happen here. So kind of not tread carefully, but be aware of what you're doing. All right, so I'll go ahead and grab that, grab the point, drag and drop it down, say okay to that, say okay again, and we'll get out of the sketch. Okay. Now, one last one that we might get into is a duplicate of a sketch. I need this sketch on the other side, but I need the exact same sketch. All right. So there is something called a derived sketch. I'm going to go ahead and start by picking the sketch that I want to make a copy of, and then I'm going to hold down my control key and I'm going to pick the plane that I want it to go to. Now, when you select a plane and a sketch, under under Insert, we will have the Derive Sketch option appear. Does everybody see it? I don't see it. Wait up. Insert. There it is. Derive Sketch. I was close, right? Wrong menu. So when I click on it, it's going to make a brand new sketch for me, and you'll notice something peculiar about the sketch itself. What do you guys see? Is it fully defined? No. Why isn't it fully defined? Any ideas? Does anybody see any dimensions? No. In fact, derived sketches are pretty unique in the way that they react. Notice what tools are available in my sketch. I am in Edit Sketch mode, and notice that none of my sketch tools are available. All right. And the main reason being is that when you do a derived sketch, you are making what is considered a duplicate of the original. It means you can't modify it. If you want to modify it, you have to go back to the original sketch. All right. So it's not a copy. A copy actually just brings everything over, and I can change dimensions. Derive means make an exact duplicate. Now, my question is I need to get this exactly on the other side. Now, I could use the mirror tool, but I can't use the mirror tool. Why? Because it's a derived sketch. So here's where that modify tool comes into play again. I'm going to go to Tools, Sketch Tools, and Modify once again. And if I take a look here, there's really, I have Translate, Rotate. There's even a scaling factor in here as well too. You want to take your scale and scale it up 2 times, you can do that in here, all right? But does everybody see the black origin in the middle of nowhere? All right, now if I zoom into this, we'll see that as I hover over the endpoints here, that will change my right mouse button click. So if I right click on that dot, it actually will create a different type of reflection. So in this case, if I pick it that way, it's going to make it opposite. So I took my transparency and I flipped it. All right. So then I can come in, grab that endpoint, drag and drop it over here, drag and drop it closer. There we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and say close to this. It's still underdefined, and that's because I can still rotate this. All right. So the only thing I really need to do here is I'm going to pick this point, pick this line, and I am going to make it coincident, and that's going to fully define it for me. All right. So sketch modify. You get into a condition where you need to move the whole sketch up, or you need to put the origin in a different location, or you just need to rotate it 90 degrees. Don't rotate the geometry or move the geometry. Move and rotate the sketch itself. Your relationships will survive. There's less fixing, and there's usually generally less cussing involved with it as well too. Sound good? All right, Sketch Expert tool. Anybody heard of the Sketch Expert tool? Has anybody ever had an overdefined sketch and can't figure out why it's overdefined, and so you just delete it and get a new job at Wendy's? Yes. All right, so now, generally, when we're getting into over-constrained conditions, sometimes it's early on in a complex sketch. You draw a rectangle and put 2 dimensions on and a couple relationships on. Generally, you're okay. But the more complex that your sketch gets, the more dimensions that are being involved, the more relationships that are being involved, you can start running into issues where things aren't working correctly. So the other times that you run into it is you're trying to make a change. You want to do something different to the sketch to make a different part, or do a revision on a part, and you go to make that change, and then SOLIDWORKS blows up on you. It gives you a whole bunch of guff, and you don't know what's going on. So in this particular case, let's take a look at this. What I'd like to do is I'd like to have this arc so that it's tangent with this edge right here. All right, and it should be pretty straightforward. I right click, I edit the sketch, I go ahead and I'll go normal 2, and what I do is I just grab the arc of the line and I say make it tangent. But I have a little bit of an issue. First and foremost, I shouldn't even have been clicking on the screen because I have a fully defined sketch. If your sketch is fully defined and you add any more definition to it, you will overdefine it, period. That's all, okay? So, but actually, I want to overdefine it, because if it goes overdefined, I can now have SOLIDWORKS help me out figure out what's going on. Now, I'm going to come in and grab this line again. I'm going to hold down my control key, grab that arc. I am going to make a tangent. That's what I want it to do. But I now get this error here. It's overdefined. Now, this is pretty simple. Does everybody see the 120 on top? It's the 120 causing me all the issues. It's making the center point stay there. It can't move over. So my sketches are pretty simple, but sometimes this isn't the case here. Now, does everybody see way down at the bottom? And let's see if I can get it to zoom in. Oh, see, I knew it would disappear. There was a little sign down here that says your sketch is overdefined. And then it said, click here for the Sketch Expert. Well, do you see the overdefined here? This is a secret button. Did anybody know that?
Cool.
All right, I'm going to pick on the secret button, and when I click on it, we'll see that our feature manager will turn into the Sketch Expert tool. Okay? You can search for it all day long. You'll never find it. It only is available when it says overdefined at the bottom of the screen, and you have to click it. All right? So what it's going to do is it's going to say, well, I'm going to read the directions. This is the best thing in here. Click, diagnose, define solutions. Okay. So you click it, and then it pops up, and it says that it found 5 different variances in here to make it work. The first thing it says is get rid of your tangency. Is that what I'm looking for? No, I wanted that. So we're going to go ahead and say, well, show me something else, SolidWorks. So I hit the little next button here, and then it says get rid of the vertical. So if I got rid of the vertical, could it make a tangent? What I like about this is it actually updates the geometry to show me what it'll look like, and then it goes what it used to look like. So I can make a good decision here. I go, nope, I don't like that. We're going to go ahead and do this. And here you can see that they say ixnay the dimension at the top, and that'll move a tangent. Is that what I'm looking for? Well, for grins and giggles, let's go ahead and see what else it found here. If I take off the radius, it can make it small enough to fit the condition. And then, oh, if I get rid of the coincident relationship, it can drag that edge out. So I think I like number 3. Would you guys agree? Now I hit accept. SolidWorks gives me the little green thumbs up, says, hey, your sketch is all good to go. And then I can say okay, and without having to get frustrated or delete things or do anything, SolidWorks simply gave me the answer. Kind of nice?
Very nice. That is one thing that's
For sure.
That's cheap.
All right, that's it. We're all good for the day, guys. All right, so trim tool, new and old, depends on how long you've used SolidWorks and stuff like that. So let's get in and throw some geometry on the screen just so we can kind of play around with it. So we'll just start with some random stuff. Yes, sir. When do we have to stop? Is it 1:45? All right.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, I'll go through another minute here. Let's see. Let me hit. Yeah, I'll do this. This will be a good one, and then everybody can hit me up afterwards. So one thing I do want to show you with the trim tool is this. There we go. And then let's throw center line in. So the trim tool, pretty nice tool. It is available for you. Basically, when you're in the trim tool, you've got the power trim, which you've got these other buttons, and if you use them, that's awesome. I don't. But basically, you just kind of click and drag and trim stuff out. The problem is stuff like this happens where I have to trim here, but then I trim the center. That's not what I want. All right, so I'm going to hit undo here real quick. New to 2019 is there are 2 new options. So if you're not using 19, it's not available to you yet. When you upgrade to it, eventually you will find it. But down here we have keep trimmed entities as construction geometry, and then ignore trim or construction geometry. So if I turn these both on, what we'll find is that I can still trim just like I did before, but you'll notice that as I trim, it turns it into a construction line. And then if I cross over a construction line, it won't trim them out anymore. So it only works on the correct pieces that I want it to. Kind of nice?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, I guess we're all done, guys. No, I was gonna, and these were kind of fluff. We have the intersection tools, slice tools, 3D, basic 3D sketching basics. If you guys are ever in a 3D sketch and you're beating your head against the screen, use the tab key. That's all I'm gonna give you as a hint. You guys can get a hold of me and look me up online. I do work for DASI Solutions, so my email is out there. If you really, really want to know some secrets about it, it's the tab key. That's all I was going to show you on that. So I'll leave that as a little bit of a hint. And I apologize for, see, is that my alarm? Are you the timekeeper? All right, I do appreciate your time, guys. Thank you very much. And I'll be here later too.